What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, you are watching TWA Motorsports, and today doing a little love work on Cohen's old daily driver, which I'm actually driving now, guys. This thing was just sitting around and I figured might as well drive it and keep miles off my truck. He's been driving his regular cab, which you're gonna have an update video pretty soon on that. He's doing some cleaning still, trying to get the trim off the side. But on this thing, got a couple things I want to address today. For one, it needs an oil change. We're a little over on an oil change. We need to get this headlight. I noticed the other morning when I was going to work, one of the chips has went bad in the dim. So when you're driving down the road, it's way brighter on one side than the other. So I got a set of cheap replacement LEDs for the headlight bulbs here. I'm gonna swap in, and then for the last, I don't even know how long, this has hyper flash, this blinker right here, and so the socket looked pretty rough. We're going to be replacing that socket, and then if I get to it, I actually have a fuel filter I might be replacing as well. But we're going to kind of work inside and outside today. I think I'm going to pull it up on right behind his truck and do the oil change, and I may even do the light there while the oil is draining. I don't know, but we'll just see. Let's get the oil pan, get this thing moved into place. It's warm. I just drove it. I like changing the oil when it's warm. Let's see what we can get accomplished. Now I've got this thing out here. A couple of things I use. For some reason I feel like there's a 13 millimeter on this one, but it should be a 15 millimeter. I've got a oil filter wrench. Obviously we got a pan here. I'm gonna grab that, put the cap back on it, and we'll slide that under there. But one of the other things I forgot to tell you guys is about 200-ish miles ago, I poured some Seafoam in that oil, so it's gonna be pretty grody and pretty thin. I generally like to do that when I haven't, like, we have only changed the oil in this truck like one time since we've owned it, because he just doesn't put a ton of miles on it. But anytime, like, to get into my service sequences, which is 3,000 to 5,000 miles, I like to do that. I sometimes will do it on stuff that I even change it on, like if the oil's really dirty, I might even do it after I've owned something for a while. But I think it's a good idea. Put some Seafoam in the oil. Don't drive it a ton, 200 miles, and you're only supposed to put about an ounce for however many quarts it takes. But let's slide this thing under there, get that hot oil to drain. Well, I was wrong. It's a 15 still, stock bolt. Pretty easy to access though, on the ground. You can tell it definitely has a leak though. So let's see if we can get that bolt out. And the cool thing is the oil filter is close, so we can keep the pan in one spot. Well, the good news is the plug came out fine, but it's bad. The gasket needs to be replaced. So I don't have one here. We're just gonna have to use this for now. We'll put a new one in on the next oil change. See that grommet, the gasket is just, it's all smashed and worn out. We need a new one. I like these magnetic ones, so I like to order GM ones if possible. I know we're going back and forth here, but one of the things I always do, first of all, make sure that this little rubber seal came off when you took your old filter off. But I like to use Wix, I like to use Mobil 1, and I always like to, when I'm able to, when the filter doesn't mount like sideways, I always fill this up, pre-fill this before. Just gives you less of a dry start. And then the other thing I'm gonna do is we will take a little bit of this new oil and rub around the top side of that gasket. Then we'll get it all back into place and hopefully move on to something else on this thing. I feel like it's been neglected now that Cohen's got his new truck. Now that we got the plug back in, filter on, with the help of this filter wrench, guys. I use one of these all the time, even just to snug it, because my hands are always slick from oil. So pick yourself up one of those. These things show to take 6 quarts, which sucks because they sell obviously in 5 quarts the way I buy them. But that means you got to buy 2, but you got some extra. I'm going to go ahead, this one had a little bit left, so I'm going to go ahead and dump 5.5 quarts in it. We're going to start it up, make sure everything's good, and we'll move on. So after filling with 5 quarts, starting checking, it took all 6. Generally it doesn't, some stays in there, but I will tell you guys that to reset these are a little different because they don't know how to reset. So how I do it, I think maybe you have to have the door closed. Maybe you can do it without. So you turn the key on and then pump the accelerator 5 times and it should reset it. Let's see if it did. It did. If it didn't, you would have a change oil that pops up in the message center. It's double check it here. One of the other things I'd like to do in this video, the key fobs on this thing no longer works, and I have some extras. So maybe we can program some of those too. Anyway, let's move on now that we got the oil changed. You're gonna hear Cohen in the background here, but as far as the headlights on these guys, we replaced these, remember, with a new unit. If you pull these out, our headlight will come out, and we're gonna have to pull both because I'm gonna replace both dims. But you can see that's all there is to that. I'll spin that bulb out. But we also need to get the lower one out, which is just clipped in. I'll try to show you that. Let me get this one out of the way first. I do want to check this real quick though, because like I said, I think what happened is one of the chips on one side went out. Yeah, it did. Oh, it's really dim on one side and it's not working on the other. Whereas you can see this one's nice and bright. That's our problem. Now to get this lower light out, pretty simple. If you can look down here, there's a little clip. See that little clip? Push that. That side will pry out. And the other side will come right behind it. It kind of hooks in. And then we can twist these out of the way. The only one that's not working, technically, that I need to mess with is this one. So we'll twist that guy out of the way, the center one. That's where my hyper flash is coming from, because that socket, I believe, is bad. One of the things we want to make sure of, I got this new replacement. It's actually a Dorman part, but it is the correct one. I figured it would be, but we need to obviously cut and strip these wires, and then you've got a couple options obviously as far as putting it on. You could solder it if you wanted. It does come with butt connectors, and that is what I'm going to actually use. Nowadays the butt connectors are pretty decent and they're all heat shrink, so I'm going to add some additional heat shrink on the top side. But I'm going to cut this, and look, these wires are all white. Those obviously we have, what does it look like, a blue, a brown, and a gray. We need to just match up where they go into the housing. Okay, so the blue over on the left, the brown in the middle, the gray on the right, and we should be fine. At this point, I actually switched to a better butt connector. Like I said, I don't really want to pull my soldering gun out here, but I've got heat shrink to go over it. These are also heat shrink. I didn't like the ones that came with it actually were not heat shrink. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead, heat shrink these up. We're going to plug the bulb in, and like I said, I just duplicated the wire as it came out of this guy. We'll swap the bulb over and we'll see if we still have the hyper flash. I got it installed, but before I wrap up here, let's see what happens if we key it up. Do we still have hyper flash on the side? We may. Nope, fixed our problem. You'd know because it would be going click, 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 click. You guys know what hyper flash is. I didn't put LEDs in this, but for some reason, yeah, it's working. Good deal. We'll wrap it up in some lume, and then we'll go grab our new LED bulbs for the headlights. Got that all back together with some lume. Looks good. So as far as the headlights, I bought the absolute, well, maybe not the cheapest, but one on the cheaper side. They say they don't have any fans. Just a simple 9006, which is what we're going to need for our high beam, or sorry, our low beam. High beams are in the middle. We're leaving those alone. We're leaving the bulbs that we have. They seem to be working, the last fits. I've never had a last fit fail on me, so it's kind of odd, but hey, they did. And so what I'm going to do, let's just plug this guy in here, and then we'll put our headlight bulb back in, and our headlight housing. Actually, you know what? I think I'll screw this in the headlight first. It's hard to see in the daylight, but I got it in. It's a little more purple than what these guys were, but look, it works. So we're just going to deal with it. It's supposed to be the same color, I think. Yeah, shows to be. I don't know. We'll replace this other one real quick, same situation, and we'll just have to see what it does at night. Next, we're moving on to the fuel filter. This guy here, bought a Wix. I'll try to list all this stuff in the description. I got a couple tools here. I'm not really sure. It's been a minute since I put one of these on. I like doing this one outside because, guys, it gets gas everywhere. A lot of times in your eyes. And there it is right there. It's not bad to get out. Sometimes you have to loosen these two, or those 10, Those are 13 millimeters, I believe. 10 or 13s on the outside of the frame to get this deal that sandwiches it around the frame. But you know, try not to get gas in your eyes. That doesn't feel very good. But let's go ahead and loosen this guy up. I can do that without looking at it, so I'm not like pouring gas into my eyes. So I think we can do this down here. Just grab a couple wrenches and loosen it up on each side. See, I've got the old one out. I used a 16 millimeter on the line that goes in, and then I actually used an adjustable end wrench or a 20 on the outer, but that'll depend on what brand you have. This is like a, I don't know, a Walmart special, I guess. Anyway, we need to replace this one in the exact same manner, and it shows you the flow pattern. Obviously, we're flowing towards the engine. So just make sure you get it in the right way. You did have to take the 13 millimeters off, but just to loosen that bracket to give you a little more room. But you can see we're still dripping gas. I'm gonna go ahead and get this one up into place and snug down. All right, we got the new one in. Got it snugged up. Just get it good and tight. Got the 13s back. Now look, it's not gonna wanna start at first because we drained a bunch of gas out. So what you can do, turn it on, let the pump prime, do it again, do it again. And here's what we want to look for. We want to look down there and make sure there's not a bunch of gas spraying all over the ground. And there's not. And it's running smooth. So perfect. Now I've got an extra key fob here I'd like to program, but I don't know if it's going to work. We're going to give it a shot. So you need to close all the windows, all the doors. And we need to hold down the unlock button over here on the door panel. And then while we're doing that, we need to also cycle the key to on, off, on, off. At that point, you should release the unlock button and the lock should cycle. So let's see what happens. So holding down the unlock, on, off, and then we release these, they're supposed to cycle. And it's not working. I have a bad feeling that it's not going to happen. So, with that being the case, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this mechanism out, because the mechanism in this works. It's just the buttons are all worn out. Like, it worked before. I think it's just been beat on so many times. So what we'll do is we'll attempt to move all the guts of this one into the newer case. Well, I noticed when I popped this one open that used to work the truck and swap the nicer fob around, the solder joints broke that holds the battery. So no wonder why it doesn't work, because when I pushed it down, it worked. It will actually lock and unlock when I push it down. So I'm going to see if I can solder that back. I don't have a great soldering iron, but I can sure try. Okay, so bad news. My soldering gun sucks, and that's not going to work. I did get the remote looking better, but still doesn't work. I don't know why they don't go into programming mode. I had issues with my green truck doing that. It acted like it didn't want to go into the programming mode. So I ended up doing the same thing. I swapped the guts on the one that worked through there, but ultimately we got what we wanted to get done, accomplished on this thing. We got the lights working, so now we actually have 2 headlights. We now have the side marker not hyper flashing. Got an oil change on this guy, which it definitely needed, and we got a fuel filter. So I think we're good for now. I'd really like to do a tune-up on it, more so than what I've already been doing. We put a new filter in it recently when Cohen was driving it. I'd like to do plugs and wires if we're going to keep this thing around. And honestly, it's not hurting us. He is really dying to switch the wheels off this onto his truck. I don't know. He may find another set that he likes. These need tires, so even if we keep these on this truck, it's going to have tires soon. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, go down there and hit that thumbs up button. It really helps out the channel. Of course, like always, make sure you hit subscribe. Ring that bell notification. That will notify you every single time we drop a new video. And stay tuned to see the progress on Cohen's truck.